So the title of my presentation today is You Are Our Future Leaders. There are lots of myths about leadership. I also want to talk about what people look for, the characteristics of a good leader. I'm going to give you some examples of successful leaders, as well as examples of people who are not good leaders. And finally, I want to talk about what we can do to improve our leadership skills. So first I'm going to discuss the myths of things that people assume about leaders. They assume that people are born leaders, but that's not true. We all can learn to develop leadership skills, everyone. Okay, so what do people look for in a good leader? What characteristics do they have? I have researched and surveyed many people and have came up with all kinds of different characteristics, and I have came up with just 5 of those characteristics that are important in a leader. One of those is being inspirational. One of those is talent, and another is honesty. So first I want to talk about honesty. Last year at a university football game, there was a person, I missed his name, but he was fired because he wasn't honest. He was a dishonest person. He made a lot of mistakes with the he violated the NCAA. And then I want to talk about Bernie Madoff. A lot of people trusted him and invested with him millions of dollars. But they lost their money because he was a dishonest leader. Now I'm going to talk about an example. The person who developed Apple, who came up with that idea, they were very innovative. For example, they came up with the iPhone, the iPad, the Mac. That had a really big impact on our lives. And then back in 1988, Deaf President Now, where students led that movement, there was one person who realized, that Deaf President Now was successful. It was a very inspirational movement and motivated a lot of people who wanted to support that movement. Finally, I want to talk about CHK. This person was very skilled. People were looking for a good leader. And another thing that people expect in a good leader is credibility. And let me explain what credibility means. It means trust. It's DWYSYZ. And that means do what you say you will do. I can remember a story long ago in the 1980s when Walmart, every year, people would go to LRK for Walmart training at Walmart. I would ask her clarification on that, as I'm not sure. So people would always go to that specific location. Thousands of people, Walmart employees, came to this location. Restaurant and foods and different things like that were there, but I didn't want any part of it. I took care of it. So can you imagine, oh, no, wow. And then the training was finished after 1 week. And this person did what he said he would do. That's the quality of a good leader. And a good leader is a can-do person. For example, in the presidential elections, Barack Obama, people thought that he was too young, he didn't have enough experience, and that he wasn't ready to be president. When in fact, Barack Obama himself is a can-do person. He was good at fundraising and networking and very successful. He won the election, and he was the first African-American president who was elected in the United States. Also, I want to talk about another quality a good leader must have. They must have persistence. They should not give up easily. Another example of that is, long ago there was President Lincoln, and he was elected president, and at that time he had lost. He lost about 8 times, but he had persistence. He kept trying, and finally he won the election in 1860. He was one of the most important presidents in American history, and he signed to set up Gallaudet University in 1864. And then people who open doors for others and people that follow behind. That's another quality of a good leader. And there is a man, his name is Andrew. He was the first black deaf graduate of a university in 1954. In 1956, he went to Africa. He set up schools for the deaf there. And at that time, in 1956, there were many different countries in Africa had become independent from Europe. And that meant that a lot of so Andrew went to these places, and he wasn't very knowledgeable in their culture or their language or where deaf children were found there. He didn't have any resources or any money. But he rolled up his sleeves, he got to work, he recruited students, he got teachers to be trained, and he taught them sign language. He got a superintendent, a principal, and the result was that he set up more schools for the deaf than any other person in history in deaf education. He had over 30 residential schools that he helped establish, and they continue to this day. He passed away in 1986, actually, and many African students who graduated came to the U.S., to Gallaudet, to NCID, and different schools here, and got their education degree so that they could go back home and continue his work over there. So he really opened the door for those deaf African students to enable them to get their education in the United States and bring it back to their country. So a good leader learns from, their mistakes. They start small and they build and build and build upon that so that they become even more skilled. So remember that supporter of the black deaf president? The first time that they said, you're interested in managing meetings, interested in becoming like an officer, they said, no, I'm not interested in any of that, no. But they tried and tried and tried, and they got more experience and became brave, and they were good enough. And he did try, and he managed meetings, and he got involved by going to conferences and meeting other people and became their mentors, and the result was that he continued for more than 15 years as president. At first he was scared, and then later he got his confidence. Okay, so finally I want to give you an example of another leader. So in high school, I went to a meeting at Gallaudet. There was a conference there, and this was before computers, before the age of computers. And at that time, the president's brother's wife was a good teacher, and they said that a wife shouldn't be a team. So they took the minutes of the meeting, and they talked about all the figures, and everybody was watching them, and all the information was going over their head as they were explaining all of these figures. They didn't share the budget report or anything. They just spouted out all these numbers without giving them any paperwork to back it up. So the members left that club, and we moved to California to start a new life. And the whole time, the members never knew about the money that was there. And it went to him. That's not the best kind of person to lead who doesn't give examples. Okay, so in 1992, there was a national championship in LR. The chairperson at that time was a good leader, was a very motivating person to some of the council, and there was a misunderstanding and he stepped out. So a new person didn't have the same inspiration as this person. They didn't have the same skill, the same honesty, and because of that, the club shrank in numbers. We needed and begged the old chairperson to come back. When this person came back, they felt that the committee felt that they could trust them. So imagine who you want, let's imagine what you can do to develop your leadership skills. You can watch good leaders and see what they do, how they manage meetings, how they do their work with other people, and you can get involved with different organizations, volunteer time, and serve on councils and things like that. And you will learn from all the leaders in those arenas. You can go to NAZ and other national organizations and different meetings and see what good leaders do. Finally, you must have a good mentor, somebody who you can feel comfortable with, ask questions, and give feedback to them. You need to accept positive criticism. That's the best way that you can really develop and hone in your skills.